We return to the subject we dealt with on Friday when we talked to the Maharishi, and then we talked with John Lennon and George Harrison, and we welcome them back very much indeed again tonight. We said we were going to deal with the letters that you sent in and so on, and that's what we want to do. First of all, though, one subject that lots of people have referred to, and we talked about a little, in fact, after the program, talking about meditation and the Maharishi in general after the program on Friday, is that whole area is, what would you say? Would you say that your lives have altered since the Maharishi, that they've got more meaning or purpose or more fun or something?
I think our lives have been altering all the time. That's what life is. It's one continuous alteration, and you keep altering until you've made yourself perfect, or as near perfect as you're capable. But we have altered a little more probably since meeting Maharishi, because we've got something more to work on now. I mean, before we've known, I've been under the impression that meditation and yoga, things like that, have held the answer personally, and yet I haven't actually had any form of teaching, whereas when Maharishi came around, though, he was ready to teach us.
But in fact, from what you were saying, it would seem as though that before meditation and before the Maharishi, there weren't enough answers, or from what John was saying last week, that life, implicating you here, that, I mean, that life, you had bad days and good days, that now there are more good days, that life has more purpose, that things like money and so on weren't enough before?
Yeah, well, I mean, we said that last week. It's just that the good days are very good and the bad days are okay, you know, just through tapping me source of energy.
And I mean, has it altered your attitude to something like money? Was money ever satisfying and it isn't now, or what?
It's not, what I meant about the money last week was, before we sort of made it, as they say, money was partly the goal, but it still wasn't a sort of, let's get some money. But we sort of suddenly had money, and then it wasn't all that good. You know?
By having the money, we found that money wasn't the answer, because we had lots of material things that people sort of spend their whole life to try and get. We managed to get them at quite an early age, and it was good really, because we learned that that wasn't it. We still lacked something, and that something is the thing that religion is trying to give to people.
And now that you've got meditation, would you, now you have that plus, would you be as happy now if all the money were taken away?
Yeah, I'd probably be happier actually, because it's if you have some income, then you have some income tax. And if you have a big house, you have all the other things, headaches that go with it. So naturally, for every material thing you gain, there's always a little loss, whether it's mental or in some other way. You get a headache for everything you own, so if you don't own anything, you've got a clear mind.
You get them all saying, give it away, no?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, see, that's a lot of people seem to think that this was one of the things that was sort of too easy about meditation, that where Jesus Christ said, give everything away to the poor, the Maharishi says, just give 1 week's wages. I mean, do you think that's too easy?
No, I mean, why is it too easy? It's better than not doing anything. Isn't it? You know, what's easy about it?
When I'm quoting them, I'm not sure.
His meaning for this meditation is so that people don't alter their day-to-day routine, but through the meditation, their routine will naturally become influenced by the meditation experience. So they can keep all the material wealth and things like that they have. It's just like this gives them some spiritual wealth to go with it, and with that you're able to put the material wealth more into the true perspective. Instead of, I mean, you can use all the material things, like we've got them, and it's nice to have them, but we don't really believe in them. Whereas some people who haven't the material things, they tend to believe in them.
But if you had to choose at this moment between having meditation and all that goes with it, and having all your possessions, you would choose to give up the possessions?
Yes.
The J. Gadney writes from Plumstead, London, about a friend of his who is a compulsive gambler. and he says that this friend is married with 2 children. And he says, could meditation stop the friend gambling? Now, does it, because he says that it was implied on Friday night that meditation helps people to do the right thing. Now, is it a practical aid like that?
I don't know whether he could just do... I mean, you'd have to ask John that. So, it'd help him. You know, he might see what he's doing a bit better. Maybe he wouldn't have so much time for gambling.
You see, with the meditation, the natural thing, it comes consciousness expansion. And once a person's consciousness has been expanded, then things that they used to do, they probably have less meaning for them, because they're just able to see themselves a little bit more, a bit clearer. So consequently, things like gambling, probably the person would just see that it was pointless himself.
Yes, a lady writing from Gosport goes further. She's been practicing transcendental meditation for some time, and she says that you become more and more aware of all the dangers that exist in present living, and she finds that she avoids social things and withdraws because you find it such a strain to have patience with a senseless conversation, apart from it being an aimless waste of time. Well, thank you for coming. But now, I mean, can you see yourself getting as impatient as that with life on the superficial level?
Is she doing the same one?
Well, she calls it TM, but I mean, which I assume is. She says
there's various forms of meditation, and as we're trying this one, we're not able really to comment on hers. Obviously, hers isn't much cop. Otherwise, she'd be happy and able to go through society with whatever she needs to do. You know, this is part of this thing, is to stay and be able to do everything that you normally do, just to be able to do it easier.
Can you were explaining sort of after the program was over on Friday that, I mean, what the eventual aim of it is, and the eventual aim of life is, and the eventual point with meditation that you hope to reach. Scribbling on there again, if you like. What were you saying?
Well, with this expansion of consciousness, these 3 states that we live in at the moment, like sleeping and waking and dreaming, they're all known as relative states, because it's all relative. Transcendental meditation takes you to that transcendental level of pure consciousness. But by going there often enough, you bring that level of consciousness out onto this level, or you bring this level onto that level. But the relative plus that level becomes cosmic consciousness. And that means that you're able to hold the full bliss consciousness in the relative field. So you can go about your actions all the time with bliss consciousness.
Yes, that's true. And then can you go?
And then there's a higher one. Yes, they go higher and attain what's known as God consciousness, and then higher still to one known as supreme knowledge, where the people who know about supreme knowledge know about all the subtle laws that control the universe. Consequently, they're able to do all those things that are called miracles. In actual fact, a miracle is just having knowledge of supreme law.
And so that these people are able to do miracles, are they, when they reach this point, also able to live longer and do this?
Yes, well, there's lots of cases. There's a book I've been reading about a yogi known as Shivapuri Baba. He lived to be 136, and when he was 112, he got cancer of the mouth and started smoking cigarettes and got rid of it. And there's another one. There's one who's in the Himalayas at this very moment, and he's been there since. I mean, it sounds pretty far out, you know, to the average person who doesn't know anything about this, but this fellow's been there since before Jesus Christ, and he's still here now, in the same physical body.
Same suit.
But I mean, so that from before Jesus Christ, and he's still there?
They get control over life and death. They have complete control over everything, having attained that higher state of consciousness.
And this is eventually the aim of anyone who takes that meditation. But a long, long time ahead.
Well, I think
They don't mean this
Maharishi's...
life.
Pardon?
I mean, they don't mean this life. You're going to get that miracle scene.
But Maharishi's...
Later, a few more lives, maybe. You might.
Yes, when you've returned a number of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But his plan is so that people from the age of, say, 15 practice it. By the time they're our age, they've already attained cosmic consciousness. That is, the state of
Stage
bliss.
3, as it were. Yeah.
Mm.
And
And
they
then they're at an age where they can go and act and manage to change the world a little bit for the better, rather than sort of waiting till you're almost dying and thinking, you know, what is it? We've got to find out where we're going. What's all this thing about death? And then they start panicking, and then it's a bit late. Now, the whole point is to try and find it out at this age, and then you've got your whole life to go and act upon it.
And then you set about doing something about the world around you.
Well, obviously, if you believe in certain things and other people aren't, as it were, harmonizing with these laws, it's all the thing about the Ten Commandments, all that. It's that sort of thing that certain people have laid down laws, or they've said that these laws exist, and we live within these laws anyway, whether we like it or not. We're controlled by these divine laws. So if you harmonize with the laws, then everything's much nicer, and nature tends to support you.
Right, at that point, can we throw it open to our audience here? I can see in the audience a number of people who are leaders in the practicing of meditation who've come along here tonight, including John Allison and Nick Clark, and also John Mortimer, who's expressed his views in print on the subject of meditation. So if we could turn our cameras round to the audience. John, have you got some comment to make at this point?
Yes, it's very difficult to do it at any speed. First of all, I don't accept universal divine laws, so that's a difficulty. But I think you've really got to judge these beliefs by their pragmatic effect and the amount of good they're going to do in the world. And what worries me very much about this attitude is it seems to be tremendously self-involved and finally tremendously selfish. And the idea of sitting very quietly perfecting yourself while everybody else goes to hell around you seems to be not really
For 20 minutes a day.
the most well, but it seems to me there's a great deal of very important things happening in the world. We're in a great crisis of history. And if we all wait to perfect ourselves, nothing will be done about it.
But it's 20 minutes in the morning, so you can go out and do something
Yeah,
about
well,
all that.
all right, if that's all it is.
Listening to what we say.
But you
I mean,
see, this kind of doctrine of universal love, in a way, seems to me to end up by not really caring about anybody very much.
Well, that's
what
your
I think
point
one
of view.
needs is a little well-aimed loathing at things like President Johnson and Ronald Reagan and so on, and not sitting in San Francisco watching the flowers grow and letting Governor Reagan be elected perhaps
Well, that's
to the
not the
presidency
same
of the
thing, you
United
know. I mean,
States.
that's watching the flowers grow in Haight-Ashbury is not what we're talking about.
No, but I think that nothing that you've said has seemed to me to have any real consciousness of the historical crises in which other people are getting involved.
But this is the whole point of this whole situation. This is in order to expand the conscious capacity of the mind for right action. And if the intelligence is increased, and if the contentment is increased, and if the energy is increased, this all comes to bear upon whatever the moment may be.
Well, it
This is
hasn't-
the whole purpose of this teaching, is for action.
But with great respect, that hasn't happened in India. What's happened in India is an enormous acceptance of disaster and the kind of placid...
Precisely. Now, this whole point is what is wrong with spiritual teaching has been wrong for centuries.
Well, that may be wrong with the Maharishi also.
No, because this is precisely the situation which he has come to reform. His position is exactly the position that you're taking up.
How do you
Well, I'm
mean?
very relieved to hear it.
How do you mean, John?
May I say a word?
Yes, of course.
A few moments of silence every day, of deep silence, can only be good, do good to us all in this world of noise. First. Second, if in these moments of silence, once we are conscious of something deep in us, which is our own being in eternity, independent of our becoming in time, then we have had the greatest and deepest experience of our life. Third, if in that moment we can feel that our object is to receive the love of the universe that brought us here and to give something of this love to all, at all times, in all places, if we can, and if not, to struggle to do it, it can only be good.
John?
And well, again, it's very, very self-involved. You want to get peace, you want to enjoy peace, you want to enjoy placidity. You think that the universe is something which has independent love for you. I don't happen to agree. I think the universe is a soulless, biological thing, and it's up for us to improve it. And we're not going to improve it if we're going to stay quite still, enjoying peace and perfection. It's
nobody's saying
Nobody's
saying stay still all day, are
I'm
they?
not doubting your sincerity about this in the slightest bit, John, but do you think you're capable of doing a right action from a state of unlovingness?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And this really,
I'm sure you are. I don't think there was much love in Lenin or much love in many, many people who've enormously advanced the happiness and the progress of humanity.
No, but you're like a chap.
And if Lenin had stopped quite still and had 20 minutes silence and then contemplated his navel, we'd still have Tsars.
You might not have had the purges in the 1930s.
Exactly, exactly. It's a very difficult choice for
What
you.
is the basis, what is the motivation of your action and your social concern? You're a man who's socially concerned. On what basis?
I think that you must try and do an imperfect best to improve the lot of other people.
But you don't seem to know why.
Absolutely right.
You don't seem to know why. I mean,
Because I think that it's finally a kind of evolutionary necessity. I think that we must advance.
Must you not improve yourself first? Take the problem of war. We all want peace. I mean, except idiotic people or evil people. But first, if we work for peace, we cannot truly work for peace unless we have peace in ourselves, unless we have love in ourselves.
Well, that's
Then you can work for peace and you can be crucified if necessary it is. But you cannot suffer and work. Finally, and this is the solution of the modern world.
Yeah, but
We might call Christian communism.
At that point, let me go back to John and George. I mean, is this fair, the parallel that's been being drawn here between your sort of getting very involved with meditation and that somehow being very, very selfish and not caring about the world?
Selfishness is it sounds like you're going to sit down in silence all the time. You know, you do it in the morning, say, to do your day's action, whatever it is, better. But you're putting it down saying, we can't sit down contemplating our navels while all this is going on. The whole point of doing it is to have more energy and more control over yourself to be able to do whatever action you've got to do.
Anyone would argue with that for a moment. If you're
Some
going
of
to...
us, some of us here are Quakers, and we've been practicing what some people would call a form of meditation which has driven the Society of Friends into action. Now, after last week's wonderful program, we're very impressed, and people have been saying to us, there's a couple of lads there who are natural Quakers. Now, do they think they're Quakers?
Well, it's all the same. This is the point we've got to try and get over to people, that religion, there's only one God, and they're all a branch of the same thing. And the sooner people get over this sectarianism, the better, you know. I mean, I'm a Quaker, I'm a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, and I'm a Hindu, and it's all the same.
Well, that's what Quakers have been saying for the last 300 years.
yes.
There's parts of the divine in all of us.
Bully for the Quakers. But I want to come back on this thing of action. It's a commonplace that we live very much on the surface of our mind in relation to the surface of events. This is a very weak situation. Now, it's also commonplace that there's a great depth in every human mind. All this transcendental meditation is a simple technique of coming to the deepest aspect of that, having established oneself in that state to come out and act, like pulling an arrow back on a bow. If you don't know about shooting an arrow, you say, what on earth are you pulling it back for? But this is the whole technique of shooting the arrow.
Yes, but then you see, there is in this belief a kind of faith in a transcendental will in the universe, which I don't happen to share. But I think you can waste a tremendous lot of time trying to get in a state of bliss and in communion with that.
Let me just
But there's no faith at all, John Allison?
This is a perceptual method. It's absolutely unconcerned with conceptual apparatus.
I don't think the Maharishi made it that clear to us, really.
Would you call it experience? Is this the word you're looking for?
It's an experience. It's experience.
But do you find, John and George, that your beliefs have altered as a result of meditation?
No, they've been strengthened. But I've always believed this for the last couple of years, but through the meditation it's just strengthened it. You see, all these doctrines and beliefs that have been laid down by great prophets, they've been put down there because these people have actually experienced it. And by their experience with some form of truth, they've tried to put it out for all the rest of the people to take up. But his argument is just based on no experience at all.
You said just now that you're a Hindu, you're a Buddhist, you're a Christian, you're all of these.
Yes.
People think of those things normally as different.
Yeah.
What is it, in what way is it that they're all the same?
Well, because it's teaching the people through various forms how to approach God, and God being the one and only creator.
But is
They're
this
all
experience
different.
driving our friends into some kind of community? This is what's bothering us a bit. Is this something you must do on your own, or does it lead you into community action?
Well,
Now,
you
I
must
wonder-
do it on your own to attain your own bliss state. Naturally, it's something that Jesus said, something about go and fix your own house first. And that's what you've got to do. Everybody goes and fixes themselves up. And when they're all straight, then they're all able to act together, because we're all one anyway, whether you like it or not.
And there, I'm afraid, we have to take a break. We'll be back in a trice. Welcome back. We've got about 3 more things to do in the second half tonight, but it's quite clear, talking to the audience and so on, during the break, that there's a lot more to be said on this subject, so we'll scrap the rest and we'll carry on with this. Do you think it's fair, what's been said so far by John Mortimer and so on, suggesting that meditation is selfish?
I don't see how it's selfish. If we've no need to be here, you know, I mean, we don't sort of dig doing TV for the fun of it. We're here just because we want, you know, we believe in meditation.
And
So
we
that's not very
believe
selfish.
we can sort of maybe help a few other people to understand that it's, you know, that it's easy.
But we've not got no need to be here either, really. And
Well, let's all
We're not claiming you're selfish.
and
though.
I would like to understand, I think that perhaps we should try and get it a little clearer. What we're talking about, if we're talking about a mystical religious belief, which I think that George Harrison is, because he talked about the divine laws that make
It's
the
not
sun
mystical,
get up
you know,
and go down. Well, let me just
mysticism.
finish
Yes.
this. Then that's one thing, which I would dispute. But I would like to ask John Anderson whether really this has got anything to do with a belief in God at all. Because if all we're talking about is a technique of self-examination which you can perform over shaving in the morning and then go out and help mankind more as a result of having done it, then nobody in their senses would dispute that it was a very excellent thing to do. Are we talking about that, or are we talking about a universe which has some hidden laws and a hidden creator who manifests himself only to people like Mr. Harrison and the Maharishi when they get into a state of trance? That's what I want to know.
Well, let's face it, these laws that you say, hidden laws, they are hidden, but they're only hidden by our own ignorance. And the word mysticism is just being arrived at through people's ignorance. There's nothing mystical about it, only that you're ignorant of what that entails.
Well, everybody with any religious belief has always thought that everybody else was ignorant about its mystical value. But are we really talking about mysticism, or are we talking about a technique of improving yourself, which is totally scientific and
You can
rational?
take it either way. You can take it either way.
Well, that's easy.
This is because it is a perceptual method. If a man has got a great conceptual apparatus and he meditates, he will begin to understand the nature of the conceptual apparatus, and if he's wrong about it, he will begin to understand where he's wrong about it. If he's got no conceptual apparatus, he simply perceives an abstract experience. Now, when he's had an abstract experience, he may wish then to give himself explanations of it. But it's primarily a perceptual method.
And how, for everybody, do you define the word perceptual there?
Experience, rather than thinking about something. Not an idea, not an attitude, not a belief, an experience. It's the difference. Conceptual is a biological textbook. Going for a walk in the country is an experience. They refer to each other, but they're in different situations.
And so what this offers is an
should this-
experience.
But why should this abstract experience be any more valuable than any other experience? You see, George Harrison talked about a bliss experience. Well, you can have a bliss experience by drinking a bottle of whiskey. Now you get a hang yourself. Why is his bliss experience,
a hell of a non-bliss
his
experience
abstract
next
bliss
morning, isn't it?
experience in any way more valuable than anybody else's bliss experience?
You are notoriously a sort of anti-God man.
Not
But if
really,
you
no,
tell
I'm
me
not
that
happy
the
against
God you don't believe in, I'm sure we'd all say we didn't believe in him either. But one isn't talking about belief, one is talking about experience. And this experience is an inner experience. And having had this experience, or having this experience, you then have to describe it. And certainly there is a language to describe it. But it's something that can be talked about. It's something that is actual, that happens as much as the historical.
Yes, but look, but I mean, the thing is that what is the difference then? I mean, what is the difference between the experience, the two things that John has just said? What is the difference between a bliss experience through meditation and, assuming it's possible, a bliss experience through drinking, as I sound as though I'm doing at the moment, a bottle of whiskey?
Because the bottle of whiskey one is relative. It's could be relative bliss depending on how intoxicated you got. Whereas the meditation, you go beyond this ordinary experience that's on the relative level of experience. It's beyond that. And this is why you can't tell the people about it, really. It's something that if they did it themselves, then they'd know because they'd actually experienced the thing. But you can't talk about an abstract experience. You can't really put it into words.
But you see, that's what Dr. Ellison has talked about. He said it's an abstract experience. Well, that sounds to be a very blurred conception, and as uninteresting, really, as abstract art. Why isn't it better to have an experience which is related to the actual world we live in?
Why not try?
Yeah, well, this is the point.
It'd be very interesting.
Could I make this point, John? I mean, the thing is that in the last resort, people can talk about meditation until they're pie-eyed at you, as if you're a public meeting on television. And in fact, won't convince you or anybody else at all. It's just simply something you have got to try. I cannot tell you what a strawberry tastes like. In the last resort, if you want to know what a strawberry is like, eat it. You may like it at the end of it all, you may not.
But it doesn't give the strawberry some translucent, mystical...
Look, well, speak for yourself. I adore strawberries. I mean, fraise they're one of the most delicious things in the world. But, I mean, let's get on a sidetrack.
Yes. Let's get on to your restaurant.
No, but the point is this. The point is this, John, if I could just finish, is the reason that all of us who practice meditation feel it's so important for people to know about is because you do come to a state where you can find total serenity, total peace. And this is desperately what the world is needing.
There are many, many ways of achieving total serenity.
We're not
How do you do it?
only
You can
one,
go,
for goodness sake.
I never have had it.
Well, why
But-
don't you
and
try
I
it
don't-
then? Instead
I
of
don't
talking about
honestly
it?
know whether it's something that I'm particularly interested in. You can achieve total serenity by going mad. You can achieve marvelous serenity by going to sleep. One has got to decide is whether the serenity which you're seeking is A, of practical value to the world, and B, particularly enjoyable to yourself. You say it's enjoyable, but we don't know.
No, don't worry about whether I personally enjoy it. It's totally irrelevant. Do you believe there is such a thing as evil and sin in the world? Nastiness.
Well, that's a question which I don't know how to cope with on the moment.
Something unpleasant.
I certainly believe there are very many unpleasant things in the world, yes.
Now, I believe it is true to say that all sin is fear-motivated. I believe fear is the central enemy of mankind, whether it's neuroticism, whether it's actual active, aggressive evil, doesn't matter what it is. Fear, fear, fear. This is our heritage. I think for original sin, you can read original fear. Now, paradoxically, society for countless generations has been trying to fight fear with more fear. Fear of hellfire and damnation, fear of what society will say, what people will say, fear of the hell of the cat, fear of the gallows, fear of prison, fear of this, fear of that, piling fear upon fear upon fear. It's not surprising that, in fact, society is in a ghastly, terrible state. Now, where the Bible says, perfect love casteth out fear, this is just what we're talking about. To arrive at a state of peace, of serenity, of joy inside yourself. You are no longer afraid, therefore you're able to give out love to other
Nobody's
people.
going to argue that it's not a good thing to cast out fear. Nobody's going to try and say it's not a good thing to love people and have goodwill as much as possible. The only thing that I'm venturing to question is whether the pursuit of your own serenity is the best path towards achieving all these excellent
Well, if
results.
you're happy, you're more likely to make other people happy. That's all it is, you know.
Not necessarily.
Why?
I could imagine a very happy husband giving his family absolute hell.
Well, he's not really happy then. You know, I'm talking about true happiness.
That's very easy.
How would you
Well, as
put true
opposed to
happiness?
happiness from a bottle of whiskey and happiness from going in there.
Isn't
No,
that
same again?
a difference of words? A bottle of whiskey, I would say, gives us pleasure, gives us something transient. If I drink it, somebody else cannot drink it. But an experience of joy, even the experience of a poem or of a music, of contemplation of nature, we all can have it. And therefore, that higher experience, we call it joy, is the joy, and that joy grows higher and higher until we can find a joy in the very center of our souls, the joy of being and the joy of love. If for a moment we all have this feeling of love now, here, universal love, the millions or thousands of people who hear us would feel it.
Yes, but what
They
is
will
a
feel
feeling?
now.
What is
They
a
will
feeling?
feel it.
Right.
And they will be one
This
with
is
us.
it,
and
you
we
see,
will
it's
one
all,
with them.
it's vibrations that people give off. I mean, if somebody's happy, then he gives off a good vibration, as opposed to being annoyed, he'll give off a bad vibration. It's something like that. If you get a lot of people, like when we first went to Bangor, we met all these meditators. And it's so obvious just by seeing the people, because they give off this peace and happiness. And
See,
that's
there
the
were a lot
thing,
of
the
very
more
happy-
people who do it, the more the vibration and that's the influence for everybody else. The bigger the vibration, the more people receive it, and the more the other people will believe it.
You see, there were a lot of Christian saints who spent their time nude up in convents, carefully cultivating their inner sincerity and grooming the perfection of their own souls. And there were other saints, I suppose, who went out into the world and tried to improve a lot of other people. And I think you simply have to choose which you admire the most.
But sometimes
This
you
is a
don't...
cake and eat it scene, John. This is literally a cake and eat it scene. But I agree with you. There have been techniques, and there probably still are techniques, of people withdrawing totally from the world and living in a cave or sitting on the top of a pillar and doing absolutely nothing at all, apparently doing nothing at all. Maybe they feel wonderful, and then quite validly you say, what good do they do? Now, all Maharshis come to do in the West is to teach every single one of us what...
Look out, Charlie. Look out, yeah.
Ah, the end of the world.
Rather
Yes.
irritating, I understand.
That's, yes.
Right.
No, it's someone who's just drunk a bottle of whiskey.
Sheer cosmic, this is cosmic consciousness at work, obviously. No, what was I saying?
You're not expected to remember.
You're not expecting.
No, this whole point is that it is a technique whereby somebody, whatever you're doing, or maybe frightfully busy, you just meditate for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour, twice a day, and you come back slap bang on with very much more energy to get on and do things.
But this
There
is
is
being
an
talked
increase
about
of
as though this
energy.
is something new. Is this?
Yes.
Are you claiming this is
No,
something
no,
quite
not
different?
at all. No, it's the oldest thing.
It's
guys.
older than time.
That
Yes.
you are expressing in a new way something that has been with us all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and it'll always be here.
But it has to be rediscovered from time to time,
Yes.
because our society, as it goes on, overlays it with materialistic concerns. We build a nice structure for ourselves, we're getting at the money, we're building ourselves a nice career, and we're kicking other people in the teeth while we're doing it.
And then
So
you go
continually we have to
but I mean, I
rediscover
think the
a
the
true
thing
depth
that
to yourself.
the thing that people were concerned about after Friday's thing was that this meditation, while it may do something for the individual, was not also concerned with the other 50% stopping us or other people kicking each other in the teeth. Now, today it's clear that the way John Allison, George and John see this thing, it equally then reacts on the way you live and the way you behave and the way you care about other people. But I don't think it is the meditation that does that, is it?
Right.
It's that we're rather fortunate to have three exponents here who do care. You could be an exponent and not give a damn, couldn't you? What you just said is that...
You
No, it
can't
would be
find your way towards...
Not a matter at all. You see, one thing that hasn't been said, that state of pure consciousness, which what attention is led to in meditation, is the same in everybody. Come to that state, this is union with the whole creation. Having established that in the mind, you come out and act. Little by little, as you go on, year after year meditating, more and more and more of that comes out. So in the midst of your dynamic, frenzied activity, that is not overshadowed, and that becomes automatically expressed by your action.
Then you're back on a mystic faith and a universal consciousness.
Right, one last question, because...
Mystic all the time. You know, there's nothing mystic about mystic. You know, it's just a word that people have invented because they don't understand it.
But, all right then, John, what is then the difference, would you say, between John Lennon before meditation and John Lennon after a few weeks of meditation?
Well, before I wouldn't have been here. I've got more energy and more happiness. I don't know about intelligence. I'm just happier. You know, I'm just a better person. And I wasn't bad before.
I'll second that.
Yeah. Thank you, George. Thank you.
And that, there, with personal testimony, is where we must leave it. Until tomorrow night, good night.